So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment.
Wait for it.
Gaming?
Wait for it.
Anime?
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is... wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wait For It podcast. I am your co-host, Phil Smith, aka Phil the Filipino, and joining me as always is your other co-host, Mr. Eric Almighty. And Eric, we are here with the September edition. I always gotta check my months when we get towards the later part of the year. It all runs together, it's all the same, time isn't real. September edition of the international feature. And, you know, last week, when we discussed Severance, you made a bold claim stating that I feel like we've turned a corner here in terms of how we are reacting to some of these movies, these TV shows, video games even. And I certainly hope so, because it seems like we're going 2 for 2 here in terms of late to the party and then international feature. So very excited to talk about In Bruges, which Eric has been mispronouncing for months. I never corrected him because I don't know that I never put together. I don't know why I never put together that this was In Bruges. It just was something that never crossed my mind. But Eric, we love the Banshees of Inisherin so much, which is a film we covered, I believe, last year. This was only really a matter of time for us to circle back around and watch an earlier production from Martin McDonagh, as well as 2 of our favorites now in Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell. So excited to power my way through this one. As you guys can probably tell, I'm a little under the weather, but hey, we ball, right? That's how we do it here at the Wait For It podcast. And Eric, I couldn't miss a chance to talk about just one of the more dark and somehow delightful films that we've seen on international feature in a long time.
Yeah, and it really brings us back to those roots of some of those core movies that we remember doing in this particular series, like Banshees of Inisherin, same director, same like main co-cast members. There just is so much to anticipate with this film going backwards. I could only imagine if we had watched it in reverse order what the hype of that movie would have been. And Banshees was an Oscar-nominated film. I would argue I gotta watch it one more time, but I'm pretty confident it's a top 20 film for me. Maybe higher. I could probably go higher upon a rewatch. Love that movie. And this one, again, had those lofty expectations behind it. So for In Bruges, I am very excited to talk about our experience. At the very least, we were going to find things that we enjoyed about it, which I think is always a good sign for an international feature, especially because if this is a film you haven't seen, we likely will stay away from spoilers until the end unless there's something specific we want to talk about, because this might not be a movie you've ever heard of or might not be on your radar. And that's really what the series is about. So I'm always happy when we have a film that we enjoyed, at least a little bit. I think, Phil, we enjoyed it a lot of bit, but that's to be determined.
Yeah, you'll just have to stick around and find out. But as Eric did just there, he's dropped quite a few hints. But we want to welcome in any brand new and returning listeners to the Wait For It podcast. Perhaps we just met you at Ocala Comic Con and you're going back and looking at our library. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much for stopping by and saying hello at OCC. Hope you guys had a great time. And of course, all you returning listeners, all the support continues to just really, really, knock us back. And we're so appreciative of everything as we turn the corner into the final quarter of the year, which is going to be very, very strong. So let's go ahead and jump into In Bruges. And if you want to know where you can find all the rest of our content, if you forgot, make sure you stick around to the very end of the episode. But In Bruges came out in 2008. As we mentioned, it was directed by Martin McDonagh, who also directed Banshees of Inisherin. And the letterboxed synopsis says, Ray and Ken, 2 hitmen, are in Bruges, Belgium, waiting for their next mission. While they are there, they have time to think and discuss their previous assignment. When the mission is revealed to Ken, it is not what he expected. So, Eric, this has been in our queue for a very, very long time because we were just immediately sucked in by the the comedic as well as dramatic chemistry between Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson. And Brendan Gleeson actually may pop up again here pretty soon in October's run of International Feature. We'll give you guys a little bit of a spoiler there. But Eric, what were you expecting going into this? I knew nothing about it. I didn't really know it was about hitmen. I didn't know what the assignment was. Remember when I pulled it up on like a website, I was like, why does Brendan Gleeson have a gun to Colin Farrell? And then you said, you didn't see the other gun? I was like, what are you talking about? And then I expanded the picture. I was like, oh no, what's going on with Colin Farrell? So I really didn't know anything about this other than it starred, again, two of our favorites as well as the returning director. So I wasn't really sure whatsoever what to expect heading into in Bruges.
Yeah, I think the thing that I knew we would get for sure, and this also talks about the positives of the film right up front, was we were going to get a little bit of a dark, centralized story. I didn't expect us to go too crazy story or plot-wise. I feel like it was going to be pretty centralized. I enjoyed that, and I enjoy that about this director's films. But in addition to the darkness and that centralized story, it also is a little bit unpredictable and exciting when it comes to the comedy aspects. And Phil, like Banshees, I very much enjoyed this type of humor. It was a bright spot in the film. I really it lets you have those quotable moments throughout the film that we're gonna just say subtly and no one's gonna know what we mean. And I'm sure that this isn't the only director that has done this type of comedy. Again, this is a subsection of films that we have not seen very many of, Phil. I think we're still very much probably in single-digit territory. If we could come up and rattle a couple of other similar films in our head that we've seen over the years, sure. But I think that's what's really nice about this is as first-time viewers to this type of filmmaking and this type of comedy, this type of story in this international feature, I think it was just really well done. And again, having the expectations that we had because of the more recent film with these two, Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, and the director, all of them did a fantastic job. And I really like this movie. This is something I definitely enjoyed from top to bottom.
Yeah, the only thing I can really think of that's not Banshees of Inisherin would be like Hot Fuzz, maybe, like has a similar type of vibe, and that's an English film, so that's really the only thing. Maybe The Nice Guys as well, which of course is an American film, and that's what I would think of when I'm comparing it to a film like In Bruges. And yeah, like you said, the dark humor here, I will give you guys a trigger warning. This is a very 2008 film. And we're not that the dialogue in here is politically correct, but it is funny. I'm not going to shy away from the fact that it is not funny. It's just like the same when we watch other movies such as like we were talking about the other day. What's it called? With Robert Downey Jr. The war movie with Jack Black and Robert Downey Jr. Why am I blanking?
Tropic Thunder?
Tropic Thunder is like in a glass case, right?
Yeah.
You could never break open Tropic Thunder and release it into the world today. You have to leave it where it is, and a lot of the comedy here in Bruges is very similar, especially Colin Farrell's dialogue. I laughed, man. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I didn't laugh, and just go into it remembering that if you have not watched the film yet. But yeah, even down to I can't remember what we talked about recently. I think it may have been in Severance where we talk about the cinematography and the mundane. Right, I can totally tell or see why Bruges wouldn't be Colin Farrell's thing. I didn't come away from this wanting to go visit Bruges. Do you want to visit Bruges? In fact, one of the top reviews of this movie on Letterboxd says would have given it 5 stars, but it was in fucking Bruges. So that kind of gives you everything you need to know right there. So I think really the sitting in the kind of boring moments, letting these characters sizzle and getting to know a little bit more about them, and then finding out what Colin Farrell did, done incredibly well. And I think this could have very easily been a movie that was boring, right? And it wasn't that at all.
100%. And Phil, going back to the point of what we talked about, this also made me realize we didn't do this for Severance, so I really need to be on top of the more like this section of IMDb.
That's right. I totally forgot about that.
We were geeking out about Severance so much that we just forgot. And we don't really do it for international feature because there's not many that, again, this is something that we're not as familiar with. We're still growing in, admittedly. I've seen his other film, Martin McDonagh, of Seven Psychopaths. I don't remember much of it, but I remember watching that movie. Other ones like this are Hot Fuzz, The Nice Guys with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. There's also Dallas Buyers Club and Children of Men on here. So again, very weird mixed bag because it is dark, but there's also the comedy aspect to it. So not very many movies, I guess, according to IMDb, that kind of have that same balance. And Phil, I was also surprised to see here, I believe Colin Farrell also received a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor in a musical or comedy for this back in 2009. So again, it must have at least been somewhat on the radar, but not a film that I think a lot of people talk to, Phil, and I think that's a complete disservice.
Yeah, this is another movie, you pointed it out when we watched Hero last month, another movie that just does not exist within our zeitgeist, and, that's the whole point of this, is to expose ourselves to, new movies, TV shows, whatever it may be. I'm looking it up right now. Who else was nominated for that award? You said Best Supporting in a Comedy or Drama?
Comedy or a musical, I believe.
Comedy or a musical.
Well, they have those like combos, those weird combos sometimes.
Yeah, those are two things that are not the same. So that is not interesting.
Oh no, yeah, musical or comedy. Yeah, really
musical
weird.
or comedy.
Also, I think I said Martin McDonagh, and that's not the
Martin McDonagh.
So, yeah, quick correction there, but. Yeah, I just thought that was really interesting, especially because we know Banshees for being that kind of Oscar-nominated movie, but yeah, didn't know that happened here. A couple other BAFTA awards and British Independent Awards, but again, nothing I've ever really heard a lot of people talk about, but very casually I have heard of this movie, and everybody that I have heard talk about it loves it. It is rated R. So, you're going to have a little bit of gore, some uncomfortableness, some things like that. We'll probably talk about a few of those moments in the spoiler section of this episode. But I would definitely say, again, the comedy really evens out the very depressing and darkness that this film covers from a story standpoint. And I enjoyed that probably the most out of everything, was that balance.
Yeah, and to kind of jump ahead here, because we obviously we're very much entertained by the comedy. Eric, when the moment is about to happen where Brendan Gleeson is approaching Colin Farrell in the park, and Colin or Ray pours his heart out, because of what he has done, and having to live in that guilt. And, throughout most of the movie, you just think he's kind of a go with the flow, like, oh, well, you know what, I'm going to go get drunk, I'm going to go get some drugs, and I'm going to go try and get laid. And also say some pretty offensive things along the way to a very unfortunate small working man that really probably didn't deserve as a...
He prefers dwarf.
He prefers dwarf. And until that moment, you think you really have him kind of penned down until he... delivers that monologue and reveals that he is very much aware of what he has done. And I was already bought into the movie at that point, but that is when it kind of reached a next level. I think with you and I, there's a 3 and a 3.5 level, and then there's something that happens that bumps it up. And that was probably the moment for me, even though I had very much enjoyed the rest of it up until that point. So we are definitely praising the comedy, but do not sleep on the drama part of In Bruges, because it is definitely there and it is heavy. So especially some of the stuff that happens at the end with when a third character makes their way to Bruges, which is insane.
Yeah, Ralph Fiennes, I believe is how you say his last name.
Great.
Every time I see his last name, I get overwhelmed. I'm pretty sure it's that simple, but correct me if I'm wrong. But he's fantastic. You know him in a ton of stuff. Obviously, Lord Voldemort himself. He's fantastic. He's great. And Phil, it was nice to see him play this type of like unhinged character, but that has like a lot of integrity. It was really, really a great balance. I keep saying that word because it really defines a lot of what I was seeing with these characters, the storytelling, and a lot of the beats that it was following. Again, it's a very centralized story, but it really revolves around these three at different points throughout the film. And I think we get a nice mixture of all three of the characters spending some one-on-one time with each other. So again, all three of them are characters I walked away from the film really enjoying. And whether or not the story is for you, I don't know. It is, again, that darker story. So if you're not into that darker comedy either, it may not work. But I would at least give it a shot. Phil, I had it on, and honestly, from the moment it was on, was sucked in. Like, it drops you into this world. You just have two people
Bruges.
talking a bunch of shit. Yeah.
Drops you into Bruges.
and you just learn about how shitty Bruges is. So, again, I really like that this movie just throws you into this little pot of a world that it's created with these characters that are memorable, that are interesting, and that are funny. So again, all those elements all together really just brewed the right type of recipe for me from an audience standpoint.
I finally found it. I was looking up the Academy Awards, totally forgetting you had said Golden Globes. But the other, so like you said, Colin Farrell won. Brendan Gleeson was also nominated for Best Performance by an Actor in a Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. The other nominees, Javier Bardem for Vicky Cristina Barcelona. Don't know what that is. James Franco for Pineapple Express. Ugh. And Dustin Hoffman for Last Chance Harvey. So, yeah, that's what was happening right around. It was also nominated for Best Motion Picture for a Musical or Comedy. And losing to whatever Vicky Cristina Barcelona is. Maybe we need to watch this movie. I've never heard of this.
Maybe. I did see, though, according to
Allen,
IMDb.
never mind.
No.
Hard pass.
According to IMDb, it was also an Oscar nominee for Best Writing and Original Screenplay. So,
Okay.
Interesting stuff there. Obviously nominee, but not winner. But it did win Screenplay for the BAFTA Film Awards. So, again, it definitely, when it came out, it definitely had some type of buzz, at least among the movie community. Just not a movie that a lot of people talk about, so I'm glad we're able to kind of shine some light. Phil, we obviously enjoy this movie very, very much. If you liked In Bruges and you haven't seen Banshees or vice versa, highly recommend. It's a must-watch in that case. But Phil, I would love to kind of hear, unless there's anything else you really want to touch on, would love to hear maybe how we rated this movie, how it's received, and then I still think we have a little bit more to talk about, but we're starting to trend into spoilers. So to just prepare everyone, maybe that's a good segue, unless there's anything spoiler-free you want to include in this part.
No, I think the last thing I'll do before we go into our grades is, and this will only make sense to people that have watched the movie, this is the top Letterboxd review, Eric, from a user. It says, what a conversation between Harry and Ken would sound like if they were talking about some lame person who doesn't like this movie. So he's having a really nice time watching In Bruges? Well, I'm having a really nice time watching In Bruges. I'm not sure if it's really his cup of tea. What? It's not really his thing. What do you mean it's not his thing? What's that supposed to mean? It's not really his thing. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Nothing, Harry. But it's a masterpiece, isn't it? How can a masterpiece not be somebody's fucking thing? The brilliant fucking dialogue, the perfect fucking casting, the wonderful fucking blend of the most hilarious dark humor with spine-tingling drama and character development. How can that not be somebody's fucking thing? How can that be?
What one of the longest and
Shout out to
just
Simone.
funniest phone calls. Honestly, so good.
It's not really his thing.
We're probably going to do a bunch of quotes in the spoiler section to prepare you. So we'll save you if you haven't seen it from that. But you should join us for the fun for that in that back half of the episode.
Yeah, so In Bruges has a 4.1 Letterboxd average score and an 85% tomato meter score and an 87% audience score. So very, very highly regarded. As you can tell by those scores, I ended up giving it right there. I gave it a 4 as well. I certainly did like it as much as Banshees of Inisherin. However, like we talked about already, these are two types of films that I would love to explore more. So whether that be in this director's filmography or, again, some of those movies we mentioned just a moment ago, that's where I land. Interesting that Banshees of Inisherin also has a 4.1. And I gave that a 5. I can't remember what you gave it, but interesting that they have the same score, but obviously both very, very good.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm pretty sure that is one that I did grade letterbox wise, so I'm gonna double check if I have that answer. I really also think we need to start putting our scores in the body of our episodes, the show notes, because every time I go to look at it, I'm like, I gotta find out. It's probably towards the end. I don't remember, and then I just give up in figuring out what my score was. So I also need to make a list for international features. That has escaped
Oh, that's right.
me.
Let me tell you guys where this landed. This is number 7 on my international feature list, right behind Memories of Murder and before Hi Nana.
Okay. So where is Banshees on that list?
3.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I didn't give Banshees a 5, it would have been a 4.5 at the lowest. Again, I really think when I rewatch this movie, because I've been wanting to watch Banshees again, I'm probably going to give it a 5, and then it's just a matter of, is it top 20 or is it top 10? And I can really start to have that discussion with myself. With that being said, this movie, not perfect, and again, it's a very singular story. I don't think there's anything, it's not really reinventing the wheel, but it has a lot of elements of a movie I like. So I'm going to give it a solid 4 on a first watch. But Phil, this is a movie I think we're going to throw some quotes around. And if I come around to rewatching it, I might give it a little bit higher. But I think a 4 is right where it needs to be. From a filmmaking perspective, nothing is shouting out at you saying, look at me. You know, again, Bruges probably has something to do with that. But in Banshees, and again, technology moving forward, that obviously plays a part into that score, is how beautifully shot that film is with the location. Maybe that's what I'm holding against this film here. But I do think it's a really good movie. It's a fun time, under a 2-hour runtime. And a 4 is a movie that I would show to the right person. This movie absolutely fits that description. So I feel pretty confident with that score for now, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised if I end up rewatching this in the same way that I've been itching to rewatch the other film that we've talked about today.
Would you recommend, because I'm sure we said the same thing about Banshees in not being for everybody, but would you recommend In Bruges the same way you recommend Banshees, even though it may not be surface level, may not look like somebody's cup of tea?
No, only because I think it can get pretty dark in certain aspects.
Yeah.
There's one particular scene that is harrowing. It is to me at least. Maybe again, I didn't think it was necessary for that scene to be as graphic as it was. But again, I'm picking at straws here. It didn't bother me that much. I think the bigger issue is the comedy. I'll give you another.
Yeah.
I'll give you another one, and I want to make it clear. I didn't say this. Okay.
I'm gonna crop this up and.
But there is a character that is choosing a gun and says, "An Uzi. I'm not from South Central Los fucking Angeles. I didn't come here to shoot 20 black 10-year-olds in a drive-by. I want a normal gun for a normal person." And again, I just feel like, and that's not the worst one I could have pulled here. I feel like the comedy, maybe not for everyone. Maybe not for everyone. And for that reason, I would not recommend it to just anyone. I think that really is where it stops from being a 4.5 to a 5. Because I think in that 4.5 to 5 range, I think anyone can watch Banshees. I think it's a fantastic movie. The reason it might not have been a 5 is because I also can understand to a point that it's not everyone's cup of tea. So I don't know. But again, in comparison for the two, Phil, I think this one has it working against it a little bit more because of the crude humor.
Yeah, 16-year-old movie, and that certainly shows with some of the dialogue. So, yeah, I think this is a good moment to talk about that moment, Eric, that you are referring to. So if you have not seen In Bruges, we highly suggest that you step away, go watch the movie, and then return. This will be the... if I remember to do it, because I'm in this cold-related fog, if I remember to put in the get out, we'll see if it happens.
Get the hell out! Get out! Get out! Get out! Okay. Get out! Get out!
But this is your spoiler warning to let you know to get out of here if you have not yet watched In Bruges. Go check it out and then come back. So, Eric, I assume the moment you were referring to is the part where Ken yeets himself off the top of the bell tower, and we hear a splat that has, I don't know what rivals it has in terms of sound design when it comes to the sound that he makes. And even though I think I had an idea that he was going to do that to draw attention to himself, part of me was like, oh, he has the gun. Maybe he's going to shoot, God, what was his character's name? Maybe he's going to shoot Harry.
Oh, Harry or Ray, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's what's going to happen. No, that's not what happens at all. And it is a very startling and graphic scene. So, yeah, go ahead and walk through your reaction when that happened with our audience.
Yeah, so, and really, I guess it's two scenes. So the scene I was actually referencing, and now that you remind me, it's both of them. But I actually understood that because, like, he had no other, he was going to probably die anyway, so he had no other option but to kind of jump and at least, like, alert him. And he just happened to be alive at the bottom, which was also kind of heartbreaking. That sucked. But the child getting shot in the head, I felt like we could have not had that visual. And again, we're nitpicking. Maybe it's me, the parent in me. I was like, I gasped. I was like, oh shit, like that sucks. But in retrospect as well, like they really put the emphasis on like, that's like an unforgivable thing. Even if it was an accident, that's why we're in the situation we're in. And that's where Harry's resolve is really strong in the sense that like, if I did that, I wouldn't have thought twice about putting a bullet through my own head, you know? And by the end, he, in confusion, does do that.
It's not a child.
Little boy. God. But, yeah, for Brendan Gleeson and the fall for Ken and that character, it was very graphic. And I was, again, at the end, I was okay with it. Were they necessary to be that graphic? Probably not. But again, that's more of a personal preference, and it's not like it dissuaded me. It's not going to be a negative against the film. I think more so it's the fact that some of those elements may not appeal to viewers in general. And then again, mostly the comedy, which again, I loved. There's quite a bit of comedy in here that I could think. Again, we say the word midget at least 50 times. There's a lot of drugs involved. There's karate chopping a midget.
It's an inanimate object. You're an inanimate object.
You're a fucking inanimate object. Oh, God.
I'm sorry I called
so
you an
good.
inanimate object. I was angry.
It was so good. Harry, let's face it, and I'm not being funny. I mean, no disrespect, but you're a cunt. So, and he's like, the only thing...
Yeah.
The only thing that's going to change is that you're going to be an even bigger cunt. Maybe have some more cunt kids. Leave my fucking kids out of it.
My kid gets out of this.
What have they done? You fucking retract that bit about my cunt fucking kids. It just
Shout out to another MVP of this movie, which I think her name was Natalie, right? Was that or no, or was it Denise? Who was the pregnant woman at the B&B?
Wasn't it Mary?
Was it Mary?
I might have made that up. You double check that.
Well, I'm not sure who is who in the IMDb, because obviously it's not pictures of them in the movie, so it's either...
I'll find the answer to it.
Yeah, but shout out to her.
Natalie, it might have been Natalie. Yeah, it might have been Natalie.
Okay, well, shout out to her for standing on business, keeping her B&B safe, and for standing up for Ray as well, so she was
Or maybe that was
great.
the love interest. Maybe I was wrong.
That's what I was wondering, was Natalie the love interest?
Is it
It
Denise?
kind of looks like Denise.
There is a character named Marie in here. I think it is Marie.
Marie.
Yeah, Marie.
In Bruges.
It's gonna bug us.
Yeah, it really
as you
is. Yeah, Marie.
As you can tell.
Yep, that's her, Marie. Yeah, shout out to Marie for being an MVP and sticking up for Ray and standing up to Harry as well. I love the point where Harry and Ken are in the tower, and he's like, well, I can't fucking kill you now, can I? He gives him that big speech, and but still shoots him in the leg. You gotta send a message, so you can't just let him go. So
yeah, and then again, they're in the stairway, and he's like, I gotta do it, man. He killed a kid. Like, you go back to that instinct.
Yeah, no one gets away with it. Yeah.
So I really liked a lot of that in there, and I just really liked the way the characters interacted with each other. Depressing that, pretty much none of them make it out, although the ending kind of hints that maybe Ray did.
No, they're both alive. They moved to they moved out to the Irish countryside.
Yep.
Where they now live on a farm.
Yeah. And
right?
Yeah, no, that's it. And then they have a donkey.
Right.
Yeah. They have a donkey, and one of them have less fingers than the other.
And they hang out with Barry Keoghan. So
crazy.
Yeah. Great movie. Certainly not for everybody for those reasons you mentioned, but definitely glad that we watched it, and would be open to another watch in the future. Not right away because of some of those themes that we talked about, but definitely would watch it, especially with somebody that would be open to that kind of humor and interested in also watching Banshees of Inisherin, because I do think they complement each other very well, prepping you for one and the other. So, yeah.
For sure.
Glad we watched it.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that have been on our list for quite a while, especially if you're on our Patreon, which we'll plug later, but you should already know they get to hear a little bit more than you do. It was in contention most of the year. Every time we got to an international feature, we're like, are we going to do In Bruges? Are we going to do In Bruges? And it just kind of fell very nicely into that September lineup, which, again, this particular movie, not only if we wanted to watch for a while, but I felt like we needed, Phil, a little bit more of a surefire hit. And I think the reason we kept delaying it was because we were pretty sure we were going to at least enjoy it. Maybe not love it, which we ended up doing, but we would at least enjoy it. And like you talked about, while we did have Ultraman Rising back in July, Hero just wasn't it for us. Late to the Party comes so close to this. We had Lego Ninjago. Wolf Children was okay. It was a good film, but there were just a couple misses. And then in the game room section, we had a couple, literally the game room episodes as well, also really dragged us. It was another Crab's Treasure, which Phil had a bad time with. Sea of Thieves, which we both had a bad time with, and then College Football, which we both had a time with. So
yeah,
it was definitely a time.
It was a time. It's a game.
It's a game. Some good, some bad, but I'm just really glad we were able to turn it around with, again, getting to talk about Severance, now In Bruges, and we've got a couple more episodes that will continue that positive trend upward as we head to October. So, Phil, I think that is pretty much everything in a nutshell. Phil mentioned at the top of the episode, feeling a little under the weather, so I don't think we'll make it longer than we need to. So if you are ready, Phil, this is a great point for us to close the episode.
This is where I'm going to put in, I feel great, I ran 10K this morning. Really? No, I threw up in the shower.
I feel great, I ran 5K this morning.
Really?
No, I threw up in the shower.
But yes, that is a good place to wrap it up, to sum everything up for this whole episode. Watch In Bruges if you have not already, and make sure you check the Linktree link in the show notes of this episode. You'll find everything you need for the Wait For It podcast. The most important things, following us on social media, keeping up with Instagram, TikTok, Discord, as well as our Twitch channel, which we have gone to streaming every other week over on Twitch since football season has started, and that makes one of us, me, even more busy than I already am. You can also support the show a couple of different ways. One, you can head on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. That is greatly beneficial. You can also head to YouTube, leave likes, the bell icon, subscription, everything that those YouTubers say, whatever it is that helps. Also incredibly beneficial. And we're just a couple weeks away. If you're listening to this here this week when the episode releases, we have Ocala Comic-Con right around the corner. An incredibly stacked lineup. And while Eric and I will be there at a smaller capacity than we are for some of the other conventions, we will still be there to help you out and say hello and all of that. So we hope to see some of you down there in Ocala, Florida. But Eric, I'm ready to go to bed. So why don't you let people know where they can get some extra features, as you teased there a moment ago, and then wrap this baby up so I can fall face first into a pillow.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you want to hear how Phil got sick or any of the other silly conversations that we have in the behind-the-scenes portion, our pre- and post-show of the episodes, you can sign up for our Patreon. You can support us a couple different ways, of course, but that is probably the way I'd recommend supporting us the most for exclusive perks like that behind-the-scenes and or early access to episodes just like this one. Big shout-out to all of our patrons currently, Corey, Stefan, Breyer, and T3 Cato. We truly appreciate it. Hope to continue to grow that. We're already in talks, and I may mention this in the post show, about a couple of ideas how we can enhance and add more content for our Patreon base. But with that being said, if you aren't able to do so, all of that free stuff is great. Discord, following us on all socials, Twitch, TikTok, etc. We do appreciate it. The likes, the comments, the downloads, the engagement, all of it is very much appreciated. And we hope to see you at Ocala Comic Con. Don't be a stranger. Come say hi. With that being said, my name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. And please don't forget, we release new episodes every Wednesday for the podcast with bonus content on platforms like Twitch and TikTok. And all you got to do is wait for it.
So, I heard you're looking for a go-to source for entertainment. Wait for it. Gaming. Wait for it. Anime.
Plus Ultra!
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.